Construction of pattern for a pleated nightie. In the previous session, we identified the standard measurements required for making a pleated nightie. In this session, we will see how to construct the pattern for a pleated nightie using a triangular scale based on drafting instructions. At the end of the session, you will be able to construct pattern for pleated nightie using a triangular scale. Let's first familiarize with the tools and materials required for doing this exercise. They are notebook, pencil, triangular scale, measuring tape, pattern and drafting instructions, fraction table, and scale. Now let's see how to draft the pattern for pleated nightie in the notebook using a triangular scale. For a pleated nightie, we need to draft the bodice part and skirt part separately. In the previous session, we measured the different body measurements required for a pleated nightie. Note the measurements taken in your notebook. Here, the full length is 60 inches, chest circumference is 35 inches, shoulder width is 14.5 inches, bodice length is 12.5 inches, and bottom width is 65 inches. From the drafting instructions for the bodice and skirt piece, see if any fractions of the body measurements need to be taken. You can easily identify the divisions by checking the fractions written near the body measurement symbols. In this case, you need to find 1/12 of the chest circumference and half of shoulder width and quarter of bottom width. For that, we will use a fraction table. Here, our chest circumference is 35 inches. So find 35 in the first column of your fraction table. Now keep the scale under 35 and find the first fraction 1/12 of 35. Here we get the value as 3. Similarly, find half of shoulder width, which is 14.5 inches. From the fraction table we get it as 7.25 inches. Now quarter of the bottom width, which is 65 inches, is 16 1/4 inches as per the fraction table. After finding all the fractions as per the drafting instructions, we will now copy all the drafting instructions for both the bodice and skirt part in our notebook. But instead of fractions of body measurements, we will substitute the values that we have found out using a fraction table. Now we need to find the sum of these values. We have already learned how to add and subtract numbers using a measuring tape. We will use the same technique here to do the calculations. The next step is to draw the pattern of the bodice part of the pleated nightie in our notebook. We will use the triangular scale to draw the pattern in our notebook. Here, we are using a 1:9 scale to draw the pattern. As per our drafting instruction, first we will draw the line 0, 1, which we have found out as 13 inches. Then we will draw the next line 0, 2, which is 7.5 inches. Follow the drafting instructions to construct the remaining lines of the bodice part. Next, we will construct the skirt part of the pleated nightie using the same 1:9 scale of the triangular scale. Mark a starting point 9 and starting from point 9, draw the line 9, 10, which is 47 inches long. Next, draw the line 9, 11, which is 17 3/4 inches. Similarly, construct the other lines as per the drafting instructions. Thus, we have constructed the pattern for the bodice and skirt part for a pleated nightie in our notebook using a triangular scale. In this session, we have learned how to construct pattern of a pleated nightie sleeve using a triangular scale. Before we conclude, let's take a look at the key points. Step 1. Refer the drafting instructions to see which body measurements are to be taken. Note the measurements in your notebook. Step 2. Check the pattern instructions to see if you need to find out any fractions of the body measurements. If so, draw a table with all the fractions to be found out. Step 3. Use the fraction table to find out the fractions of the body measurements. Step 4. Copy the drafting instructions in your notebook by substituting the values found out from the fraction table instead of fractions of body measurements. Step 5. Add or subtract the numbers if any. Step 6. Construct the pattern in your notebook with the help of a triangular scale. With that, we've come to the end of this session.